Shalom. We are turning now to Psalm 88, a psalm of the Korahites, for the leader on Machalat La'anot, a maskil of Heman the Ezrahite. O God, God of my deliverance, when I cry out in the night before you, let my prayer reach you. Incline your ear to my cry, for I am sated with misfortune. I am at the brink of Sheol. I am numbered with those who go down to the pit. I am a helpless man, abandoned among the dead, like bodies lying in the grave, of whom you are mindful no more, and who are cut off from your care. You have put me at the bottom of the pit, in the darkest places in the depths. Your fury lies heavy upon me. You afflict me with all your breakers. Selah. You make my companions shun me. You make me abhorrent to them. I am shut in and do not go out. My eyes pine away from affliction. I call to you, O Lord, each day. I stretch out my hands to you. Do you work wonders for the dead? Do the shades rise to praise you, Selah? Is your faithful care recounted in the grave, your constancy in the place of perdition? Are your wonders made known in the netherworld, your beneficent deeds in the land of oblivion? As for me, I cry out to you, O Lord. Each morning my prayer greets you. Why, O Lord, do you reject me? Do you hide your face from me? From my youth, I have been afflicted and near death. I suffer your terrors wherever I turn. Your fury overwhelms me. Your terrors destroy me. They swirl about me like water all day long. They encircle me on every side. You have put friend and neighbor far from me, and my companions out of my sight. This is certainly one of the bleakest of all the Psalms. There seems to be no silver lining in this particular selection, no light at the end of the tunnel. In fact, in this Psalm, pretty much all you have is suffering and despair and affliction, and then the end. Everything seems to be one dark tunnel, and then you have the end. Let me remind you that in the Holy Scriptures, there was no clear theology or affirmation of a life after death or a world to come. This was an idea that was developed post-biblically. So by the time you reached the age of the Pharisees and Rabbinic Judaism, you had by then a clear affirmation of an afterlife, a world to come, the idea that death is not the ultimate end. But here in this psalm, there's a clear indication that once we die, that's it. That once we are gone, there is no further existence spiritually. The psalmist questions, do you work wonders for the dead? Do the shades rise to praise you? Is your faithful care recounted in the grave, your constancy in the place of perdition? In other words, the netherworld or perdition is the ultimate end, and the tone of this psalm is really one of darkness and of bleakness. I am particularly struck by verse 9, you make my companions shun me, you make me abhorrent to them, I am shut in and do not go out. The pandemic, of course, has shut so many of us in, and now to add further insult to injury, we had this hurricane and tropical storm, Isaias, that hit us in various sections of the East Coast. Here in Connecticut, we were hit particularly hard. I am very fortunate that we have power where I live, but so many tens of thousands of people, indeed millions in the Northeast area, are without power right now. So on top of the disorientation and confusion and difficulties wrought by COVID-19, we now have further difficulty and confusion and a sense of displacement and darkness, literal darkness, as a result of this latest storm. And so, as I mentioned earlier, there seems to be no light at the end of the tunnel in this psalm. It's all darkness, it's all bleakness. This is the psalmist's way of expressing his despair. And to me, what is remarkable about this psalm is that, unlike many of the other psalms, in this particular selection, there's no real expression of hope. There's no real expression or clear promise of deliverance or redemption. It's all suffering, and it's all bleak. The psalmist says, "I am a helpless man, abandoned among the dead, like bodies lying in the grave, of whom you are mindful no more, and who are cut off from your care." What doesn't get any much worse than that, I think. And yet I have to honor the psalmist's honesty here. There are times when, even though we try to reframe our situation and try to make dark times feel lighter, and when we try to see that glass half full instead of half empty, there are times when we simply need to sit with the darkness, when we need to embrace in a certain way the reality of despair and of suffering, and understand that this is what is happening in the moment. Certainly, we can and should hope for something better in the future, and we do. But this psalm is right there, stuck in the now, in the suffering of the present, and that is something to respect. It is a real set and series of emotions here that the psalmist is aware of. He explicates, he paints such a vivid picture of this dark time in his life that I personally feel that I need to respect that, I need to understand it, and I need to try to relate to it. Not everything in life can be explained away optimistically. Sometimes things simply are dark. But finally, at the beginning of the psalm, he says, "O Lord, God of my deliverance, when I cry out in the night before you, let my prayer reach you. Incline your ear to my cry." So perhaps one little correction from what I said earlier. There is a reference to deliverance here, but only in terms of the way the psalmist describes God. Elohei Yeshuati, God of my deliverance. But the fact that he recognizes that God has this capacity and that he has the ability and the yearning, namely the psalmist, to cry out to God for help. Let my prayer reach you. Incline my ear, your ear, to my cry. The psalmist cries. He asks God to listen. He embraces the relationship, the connection that he has with a divine being and a divine presence. And so, while there are times when we need to sit and understand what it means to be in a dark place and to experience suffering, we can still also embrace the reality of a connection and relationship that we have with a higher power, with our God, who is indeed the source of our deliverance. Thank you.